Dr. Ann Shippy, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I know a bit about your work. I have looked into your background, of course, and it's very interesting. It's interesting to say the least. You've got a background as an engineer. You're a medical doctor, an expert on environmental health. So there's a lot of topics that I know we're going to cover today. But I love to start from 30,000 feet, high level. What would you say are the most dangerous toxins that people are being exposed to today without knowing it?
It really goes into several categories. The one that most people don't realize that they're being exposed to is actually toxic mold. But then the level of pesticides that we're being exposed to without even knowing it, even if we think we're eating organic. And then the last one I would say is PFAS, and that's one that I've been digging into more deeply in the last year or two. So those are kind of my top three of the things that what's so exciting about it is that these are things we can actually measure. So we can find out if we're being exposed to or not.
Well, let's go through them one by one, I guess. Toxic mold. I had a slight mold issue in my previous domicile, like where I was living. There was we did like a dust test, and that came back, in the red. And then I had some professional mold environmental toxin testing guy come in, and he did like a bunch of air tests. And there was mold, but then it's also my understanding that we've co-evolved with mold. Like mold is pretty much everywhere. If you leave an agar dish out, like a mold catching petri dish out, like it's gonna catch mold. So how do we know if we're being exposed to the types, the dose that is actually concerning?
I love this question. And this is exactly why a lot of people dismiss mold, is because they think it's everywhere and there's nothing to do about it really, that we just have to coexist with it. The problem is that the way that we're building buildings now, they're so tight and collect moisture. So rather than just being exposed to mold spores, we're being exposed to the toxins that the mold produces, and they're held in the houses. So then we're breathing them in, and they're building up in our bodies. So it's a very different situation than just maybe being allergic to something versus being poisoned by something. So it's really fascinating for chemical engineering people into biology when we look at this whole history of how this understanding of mycotoxins has come about. So some of these toxins have been studied for biological warfare. Some of them have been studied for pharmaceuticals. In fact, some of them are used in pharmaceuticals. So one of the drugs that's used for transplant patients is actually a mold toxin.
Whoa.
And it's a toxin that we see sometimes when I test people when they're not on any immunosuppressants. It's just that some molds in the environment make enough that it tests as high as if you were on an immunosuppressant drug.
Whoa, so people could be being exposed to mold or mycotoxins or mold itself?
Well, I'm not so worried about the mold spores just floating around. It's when we're living in a chemical factory and they're building up in our body. So it's the chemicals that the mold makes that are really dangerous for us.
And could be potentially acting as immunosuppressant drugs, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
So when I see people there's a whole lot of symptoms that I look for that I start to go down the mold pathway. But if I see like a low white blood cell count or red blood cell count or platelet counts being low, so our blood matter, if I see those low, then that's one of the things that I start thinking, I better go checking for mold here.
What are the most common symptoms associated with mold toxicity?
That's a really good question. It's very difficult to answer because of our own individual biology. It can look so different, even in family members. Like the parents might have different symptoms than the child. I can tell you a little story
Please.
about my first run-in.
We love stories, yeah.
Mold. So I had been in functional medicine practice for about 4 years, had 2 boys, 4 and 8. And I was doing great. And then all of a sudden I wasn't. We had moved into this house. And on Monday mornings, I was really having trouble getting out of bed. I was so exhausted. And I noticed my hair was falling out all over the place. My muscles would really cramp up severely, and I'd have a little jumping. It's called fasciculations that you see with things like ALS. And then suddenly I was noticing that I was getting so weak in my right arm that I could not have held this without holding it with two hands and dropping out of my hands. So I was getting really scared thinking I had ALS.
Whoa. Yeah, that's a scary condition.
Mm-hmm, very. And it's definitely one of the harder ones to treat these days. I think in functional medicine, in my field, that we can do so much with so many things. I know the dementia side is really near and dear to your heart, Parkinson's, all these neurological things. We can really move the needle with our patients, but ALS is still one of the really tough ones. So I called up all my friends, my smart functional medicine friends. What do you think's going on with me? I went to the neurologist, all these infectious disease specialists, all these things to try to figure out what was going on. And I was sitting at a table kind of like this with one of my patients who I was working with on her environmental exposures, and she got an intuition that I was being exposed to mold. And she's this petite little woman. She leaned over the table and she's like, Dr. Shippy, I can tell you're really sick. I thought I had it all together and nobody could tell. I'm coming to your house. What time do you get off work? Because she had a reaction to when she got into mold. Her nervous system would go off, and she could tell, especially if there was really bad mold.
Whoa.
So she came to my house, and within 5 minutes, she ran out. She was like, I think you have Chitomium, and you need to take your kids and get out, and don't take anything with you. And I was so scared that I did that. And I had just gone to my first environmental health conference a few months before, and one of the topics was toxic mold, but they didn't really talk very much about how to test for it or how to treat. They just said, hey, this is a health issue. Mm-hmm. So my journey over the next year was really starting to understand how the toxins build up in our bodies and how to help to detox. And what's really great is within a year, I had my strength back in my arm and my hair's grown back. And I started to recognize when my patients were getting exposed. So I could really help my patients and know that even if they had something severe, like thinking that they might have ALS, that if we figured out enough of the details about their bodies, that they could totally heal from it.
That's amazing. And at that point, had you ruled out all of the other potentially bad stuff?
I went to the neurologist, and she's like, yeah, you've got something going on. ALS is a diagnosis that kind of happens over time, and there's no specific test for it, really. We did the EMG where they're looking at the conductivity in my arm, and there was no clear diagnosis yet. But I'm so grateful to this patient that she listened to her intuition, and she had the courage to say, I want to help you back, when she was there to help. When I was supposed to be helping her, which I was. So
I feel like we're kind of we're primed in modern society to subvert our intuition in so many regards, but sometimes that's what it takes, is like actually listening to our intuition, or the intuition of another.
I think it's everything, especially now when we're bombarded with so many different opinions and so many different things for us to consider. And that really gets into one of the areas that I think has gone awry with medicine. I'm so glad that I went to medical school. There are so many things that are instrumental in me helping my patients. But it really lets us down in many ways. And so we really have to listen to our own intuition, regardless of what somebody in authority is telling you to do. You've got to really check in with yourself. Like, I have a patient right now who did the Cologuard test. It's a cancer screening test. And she doesn't want to do a colonoscopy. So the next thing to do to really see, does she have cancer? Because the Cologuard is just a screening. It just says, maybe you have cancer. she really doesn't want to do the procedure. And so I have to really respect her decision. I want to encourage her to do it. I think she needs it, but her body's saying no. And so we're working through that, because even though we do a zillion colonoscopies every day in medicine, there's a risk of side effects. People get perforations, they get bleeding, things happen. Have reactions to anesthesia. That's why you sign an informed consent, so you know that it's not without risk. There's something that's not allowing her to do that, even though I and multiple other doctors have said this is what you need to do.
Well, in that context, wouldn't you say the benefits clearly outweigh the risks?
Yes, and yet I still have to, her intuition is so strong. She feels like she's fine.
Very interesting.
That's actually one of my biggest challenges right now.
I would just get a colonoscopy.
Yes, I would too.
I was uncomfortable, like a stranger sticking a camera up your butt, like.
In fact, I've changed my recommendations that are different than what the standard of care is. The standard of care is, unless you have symptoms or you have a family history, you wait until you're 50 to get a colonoscopy. I've started recommending it at 35. So the last two 35-year-olds that did a colonoscopy had findings. One had such an abnormal polyp that the gastro, when I talked to him, he said if she had waited till she was 50, she would have had cancer.
Wow.
And then the other one already had it's called a neuroendocrine tumor. So those can be really gnarly. It's very different than getting a traditional colon cancer that generally takes a long time to progress. So I guess my lesson in that over this last year with all three of these patients is back to your intuition question. When I had the conversations with the 35-year-olds, their intuition was, yeah, I need to do that. Like, that's a good idea. This 55-year-old who doesn't want to do it, the story will be told in the next few years. Can we get her to a point where her intuition is okay with following the recommendations? I hope so.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I think you have to, like, your intuition is should be one part of your decision-making matrix, right? It's like if I crack open a pint of ice cream and I take a spoonful of it, my intuition is telling me to eat to the bottom of the pint, right? But
I don't know. Is that your intuition?
That's my intuition. But then my intellect, becomes engaged, and it's like, well, if you eat to the bottom of the pint, that's like 700 calories of fat and sugar that you probably don't need. And it's like, and I know that because I know about nutrition,
Yeah.
So
it might be, though, part of your survivor mechanisms kicking in that are just so old, right? Where we didn't have freezers, where we had ice cream. Like if we
didn't have ice cream.
If we came across the berry patch, we needed to eat every one because we were going to be heading into winter and needed to be. So.
No, you're right. I mean, we definitely it's a balance, but I would say, for the most part, people are taught today to not listen to their intuition, listen to the quote unquote experts. And there's definitely a time and a place for experts, but yeah.
I really prefer when I'm partnering with my patients, like, let's have the conversations about this and let's make these decisions together so that the person feels like all their best interests are really factored in. Not just, am I protecting myself from medical legal? Like, I think other doctors are going to fire this patient that I talked about because she's not following the rules, right? And I care about her. I love her enough that I, really want to help her to do the right thing for her body. And so it's a series of conversations.
Amen. Okay, so going back to you. So at that point, did you moved out of the house and you started to feel better? Were there other tests that you ran? Like, I know that there are urine tests where you can test for, I don't know, mold, mycotoxins. Yes.
So that was a huge learning curve for me, like, to figure out, okay, what the tests are. And it's evolved so much in the over a decade since that time. But there are two testing companies that I really like. One is Real Time Laboratory, and one is called Great Plains or Mosaic now. Unfortunately, both of those tests can miss the sickest patients. So we have to use some judgment when we look at the results. So one of my patients was a oh my gosh, this precious 16-year-old, and he had developed these tics, and it's so severe that his face looked contorted, disfigured, and he wouldn't see his friends, he wouldn't go to school. And I ran the test on him, and it looked like he didn't have any mycotoxins in him. And so I just digging a little bit more, there were so many things in the story that I was thinking mold. And they lived in an old farmhouse that had been renovated. So I was like, oh, this sounds so suspicious. So I had him take a heavy dose of glutathione and repeat the test. He had a ton of mycotoxins, but his body was so poor at making glutathione and actually helping the toxins to get out of his body that it looked like he was fine from a mycotoxin standpoint. And this is such a great story. His mom shipped him off to his grandparents, and within 3 months, and we got him on glutathione and binders and things to help him to heal, and he was totally fine.
Whoa. Mm-hmm. And for people who are unfamiliar with glutathione, like, what is that?
Oh my gosh, it's something that we make in our body. It's the most potent antioxidant that we make. And it does so many different things in the body, but one of the most important things that it does is help us to remove toxins. So I check the glutathione levels in pretty much all my patients because we need to get it into an optimal range, not just an adequate range, and most people are deficient. So I've become a liposomal glutathione connoisseur because I get to collect all this data, right? See pre and post. And there are a few brands of liposomal glutathione that really do the best. And now there's also a topical glutathione that works pretty well too for a lot of people called Glutarol.
There's always been the concern that oral glutathione is not bioavailable, but liposomal glutathione, I guess, is that different?
It's different. So it gets absorbed in a form that your body actually can use it as glutathione rather than digesting it.
Whoa.
So liposomal just means it's in a fat molecule, so it absorbs right in.
I work with a brand called Live On Labs, and they make a glutathione.
They're great.
You approve?
I approve.
Okay, great. Good to know.
You're doing great.
Good to know.
You're such a good researcher.
That stuff smells nasty though, but I guess those are the sulfur molecules, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's so fun to see the data, right? So you take, you do a baseline mycotoxin testing, and then you take a big dose of it, and you see the mycotoxin coming out through your urine, so you know it's working.
Whoa. What about NAC? That often comes up, right? It's a precursor.
NAC is great. It's not quite as powerful as the glutathione, and a lot of times I'll do them together. So it's one of the precursors for helping you to make glutathione.
Got it. So you can take exogenous glutathione from like a liposomal formulation, but then you're actually getting the glutathione, but then you can also take NAC, which stimulates your body's own production.
Exactly. And some people really need to do both. I work with some people that are like, okay, just give me the top 4 to 6 things that I really need to take. And then there are people that are like, give me everything. And I honestly kind of go through those two extremes myself. There's some times where I'm just going to pick the top things. And then there are other times where I have the bandwidth where, like, if I know something's good for me, I want to work it into my routine. Yeah.
I don't know how deep you go into like nutrition, but are there certain foods that we can eat to facilitate this detox, our detox pathways?
Yes. That's such a great question. It's foundational. Like, if it's so hard to get patients better if they're not addressing nutrition. And our detox pathways actually run on nutrients. So we really need to be eating good foods. It's just so important. And, anything that's brightly colored is probably good. So if you're going to pick cabbage, throw in some red cabbage here and there, some red onions here and there. But the cruciferous vegetables are my favorite. So the broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, not so much the kale. Broccoli, cauliflower, because of the oxalates. A lot of us have oxalate issues.
Interesting. Yeah, kale is a polarizing. Dark
yeah,
leafy.
And honestly, I don't eat it anymore. But if you're willing to eat kale and you're not willing to eat broccoli or cauliflower, then eat some kale. It's
my understanding kale is like from an oxalate standpoint, it's really spinach, like raw spinach that you have to be concerned with.
Yes.
I don't eat a ton of kale these days, but I've gone through phases where I've had like a kale salad every day because Erewhon makes one of my favorite salads on the planet. It's like a kale, white bean, avocado salad. And there was a period where I was like eating that every single day. Yeah. And
honestly, if your gut's in really good shape and you're drinking plenty of water and you can handle some oxalates, fine. Eat the spinach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eat the spinach.
Eat the spinach, but like if you're trying to pick the things that are going to help you to detoxify the best, the broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage are my top ones.
Okay, awesome.
And then really any vegetables are going to have some nutrients in it that are going to help support your liver and your detox pathways. And then the brightly colored berries are also really good phytonutrients to put in.
Are you a fan of animal source foods? Because I know that, certain amino acids, sulfur-containing amino acids, for example, are also important.
I am very much a proponent of animal foods. I think it's, over 20 years of treating patients, I think it's extremely difficult to stay healthy as a vegetarian or vegan. Very, very, very very, very challenging. And my own story is, I got one on that one too. I did a vegan diet for 3 years and then got pregnant, and I had to break it. I knew that this child was not going to be okay if I didn't start eating meat.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I just craved eggs, meat. My body was just saying, you've got to eat this. And then looking back, I can see how important it is. And then especially as a postmenopausal woman and treating a lot of women, also have a lot of men too, but so I would say especially important for women over 40 to get at least 100 grams, if not more, depending on their level of activity and size, at least 100 grams of animal protein a day.
Hell yeah.
And ideally start out within 30 minutes of getting up with at least 30 to 50 grams of protein. I see such improvement in their health when they are active and building muscle. Just everything works better.
Yeah, I'm totally aligned with that. I know that there are certain dietetics organizations have put out, consensus statements that veganism, vegetarianism is, safe and healthy for all stages. But I don't buy it, because it's like, where are you getting your choline from? Where are you getting your preformed omega-3s from? Where are you getting your protein from? I even think that collagen is probably really beneficial for the pregnant woman, which is exclusively found in animal source foods. I think, why would you leave anything to chance when you're, gestating, creating?
When you're creating a protein and choline and fat entity.
Rich entity, yeah.
It makes sense that you would really prioritize that for the baby. And I think that's, sometimes why we see women really struggle in their second or third pregnancies is because they've gotten so depleted of a lot of the nutrients that they need. And then in the last month, 2 of my new patients were little ones. One was an 8-month-old, and one was a 3.5-year-old, and one was a 3rd child, and one was a 4th child. And, one was a nonverbal child with autism, 3.5.
Wow.
And then the other one was an 8-month-old with a congenital neurological eye issue. And I think, the moms just didn't know that they were getting so depleted. They were just eating a standard American diet. And then neurologically, these children are paying the price.
That sucks.
And it's so hard for the parents, right? They just didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't know that they could even, measure these things between pregnancy and really make sure that they're getting rebuilt. There are tests that we can do that look at your amino acids, your choline levels, your B vitamin levels, and good fats, and know if you're tuned up to be able to create a healthy baby.
Well, it's like animal source foods are consistently at the top of pretty much any hierarchy of nutrient density that you look at. It's like the top tier foods are always dominated by animal source foods, and then you get dark leafy greens, berries and things like that. But if you're neglecting to eat those kinds of foods when you're literally creating another being in your body, it's just, to me, it's borderline negligent. I don't know. People have different reasons for adopting those diets, but
I
it's
think
nonsensical
it's just not understanding. I don't think people are taught. Women are told, take a prenatal vitamin and you'll be fine. They're just not. They're not given the information to know. It's like it's almost like the traffic system. We trust the government to know when there should be a stop sign or a traffic light, when it should turn red, yellow, green. So I've been playing with this analogy. Let me know if it works.
No, it works.
So they don't know that they should be at the red light. Don't get pregnant.
The government's not even trustworthy for that. Try living in Los Angeles where every traffic light is out of sync. The roads are crap. And yet we pay like the most taxes, you'd think.
That's the fertility path. That's such a great analogy. That's what it's like, the medical system, the government, all these things that people are trusting them to help them create healthy families. I mean, nobody wants to have an unhealthy child. It's so hard. So I think they're just trusting what they're being told. So that's part of what I want to fix.
Yeah.
People know between starting their families and growing their families that they know what the important things are, that just taking a prenatal vitamin is not even close to being adequate.
Your lips to God's ears. Well, I guess it's worth, noting at this point that you've just written this incredible book on preconception and everything that you need to have the healthiest possible baby. So, I mean, that's an exciting resource that you've put out for the public.
I'm very excited about it. Hopefully it's called the Preconception Revolution. I'm really hoping it will start a movement so that, just like most women now don't think about getting pregnant without taking a prenatal, I hope both men and women don't start their family until they've done some prep work. So the piece that I think is even more explained is the role that men can make in the health of their future baby. So there's a lot of research that's come out on epigenetics, so how the genes are getting dialed up and dialed down based on the man's lifestyle. So what they're eating, what their toxin level is, what their stress level is, how their blood sugar is, actually can get passed on to the baby. So if we want to have healthier babies, we need the dads getting involved too, that 3, 6, 12 months before and between pregnancies.
Whoa. So a dad's metabolic health in a way can impact their offspring?
Yes.
That's fascinating. I've never heard that.
It's so exciting.
Whoa.
I know. I had so much fun researching this book. I started it in 2016 just based on what I was seeing with my patients, that they got so fertile and had healthy babies. And I was like, I need to share this information. And then life happened, and I didn't get started on it till about 2 years ago. Again, I got it 60% done and then had to put it aside for a bit. And as I was going through the research, I mean, we have some incredible researchers globally really looking at things like how toxins impact the sperm and then the future generations, and blood sugar, mitochondrial function, so many aspects of both the man and the woman. But there seems to be a little bit of extra emphasis, especially early on in the fetal development, that has to do more with the man's epigenetics.
Wow.
I know. And it kind of makes sense because the mom has a little bit more influence, during the development from her, what's happening with her. But I think it makes sense because those epigenetics help the baby to know what environment they're coming into. Like, is there adequate food? Are we at war? So, like, I had one of my kids during residency, which I, especially after writing this book, I kind of wish I had taken some time off. But he came out almost with muscle right away. And I'm sure it's because I was doing an ICU, 2 ICU rotations where I was on call every 3rd night taking care of trauma patients, every 4th night for a few months. And I did a whole night of night float where I'm the only admitting doctor in the hospital for a whole month.
So there was a lot of stress.
At night, yeah.
Yeah.
No, so it was one of the most stressful periods of my life.
Wow.
Just so much responsibility and so little time and energy to be able to actually take care of my body, and being pregnant and being, the emotional upregulation from all the hormones. It was tough.
I'm sure.
It was tough. But he's an incredible athlete. He was basically running when he was walking. And
so what do you attribute that to?
I think it was getting bathed in stress hormones for.
So in a way that was a positive thing?
I think there's also some negatives. I think And there's not a good way to actually measure his epigenetics right now. But I think the way that when he is stressed, it's almost like he's at war, right? He's like ready to physically move the tribe. He's ready to go into action. I think the way he carries anxiety and stress and responsibility is like he's built for war.
So he seems to have like almost like an exaggerated stress response.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah, I don't know if I should be talking about him this way.
No, it's okay.
No, I hope he's okay with
Yeah.
it. But, I mean, he's an incredible athlete.
No, he sounds like a badass.
Yes, he's a badass.
You said that he could like lead a tribe into war and he's an amazing athlete. Like he sounds like somebody I want to be.
Physiologically, and yet I think it's really taking its toll as far as like being able to relax and enjoy life. And like I think it's...
But isn't that all of us today?
Probably.
Yeah. But I didn't know because from the standpoint of a guy, like I thought, men are we have this, I guess, misconception that sperm is sperm. You just drop a little baby batter on your partner's egg and it's like, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter what you've done in your life, but it's interesting, this concept that, what a man actually does weighs a lot into the health of the embryo. It's
so exciting. The environmental toxin piece, like I really want to teach men to take some liposomal glutathione and detox, and for that a good 3, 6, 12 months before getting pregnant, and to get their weight good and eat healthy, get those micronutrients and macronutrients really going, sleep well, meditate, really get themselves into the top shape so they can pass on those messages to the baby.
Okay, good to know.
The toxin, and that's kind of where we started too, was the toxin piece. That's another area that the research has really been profound on the effects of the plastics and the metals and the pesticides can influence the epigenetic expression of the children.
Okay, so let's circle back then. We were talking about mycotoxins, we were talking about mold, we were talking about the problems with, the modern architecture, if you want to call it that, is leading us to live in these increasingly hermetically sealed chambers. There's not a lot of ventilation happening. How should one begin to clean up, I guess, their home environment from that standpoint? And then we can go into the pesticides and the herbicides, which you've mentioned, as well as the plasticizing chemicals like PFAS.
Yeah. So we went awry with building science when they went through the energy crisis in the 70s, where they started, they took hundreds of years of building houses to change it so that they're energy efficient. And then they also started using materials that have mold spores in them, the drywall. So you just have to get either too much moisture or have a little leak and not know how to fix it properly. And you can have a pretty significant mold issue. So people that have a leak and they know they need to fix it within 24 to 48 hours, like rip out the drywall and get it all fixed. If it's a leak on the floor, pull out the floorboards and all that stuff and get dehumidified, it's going to be fine. But if you think you're going to paint over it or ignore it, you're probably going to end up having an accumulation of mycotoxins over time. The real challenge is when the leak is hidden, like what happened with me. There was a flashing on the chimney that when it would rain a certain direction, it would come down the wall in my son's bedroom and in my bedroom and underneath the floor to his bedroom. But it wasn't enough that it would get the paint wet. So we really only found it by crawling through the attic and then taking up the carpet underneath his bed.
And did you see mold?
Yeah, it was visible.
It was visible.
It was a massive mold issue.
Wow.
And it was a mold called chitomium, which is very neurotoxic.
I had visible mold in the HVAC system of my previous place.
Okay.
Yeah, and they cleaned it, but who knows?
It's really tough to clean an HVAC system to really get all of it. You really have to keep doing the mycotoxin dust tests to make sure that it really got cleaned.
So do you have a checklist? Like if somebody, is either looking to move into a new place, looking to buy a place, not build a place, I guess, but to, lease a place, or if they currently maybe a means of assessing where they currently live.
We have auntchippymd.com/mold. There's a whole bunch there. It's got the testing. It's got my favorite supplements, just all that people can take a peek at.
But is visual inspection sufficient? Would you say, like, the smell of the place?
So the smell is something called VOCs. So that's another type of chemical that the mold is making that just happens to have an odor. It's like paint, but it happens to be made by mold, and not all molds make that.
Got it.
So if people think, oh, I don't have mold because I can't smell it, it's not a good decision making. So doing the test, the dust test, like what you did, is really the best way to do it. The air sampling is only really helpful if you actually do it in a wall cavity. If you just do it in the center of a room, that's who you want to hire if you don't want to find it, is to do there's a little motorized air filter thing. But a lot of the really toxic molds, like Stachybotrys and Schutomium, the mold spores are big enough that they kind of drop where they are and they don't make it to the air sample. So I can't tell you the number of patients that come in that they're like, oh, I did this test, but there's no mold, and it's just not the right test.
Wow. The dust test, I think would you say it's important to, like, when recommending that, to, maybe leave an asterisk that there is mold everywhere? Or, because I just, my concern is, like, people doing these tests, and I mean, I did a dust test and it did say that I had mold in my place, and it turned out to be correct. Like, there was visible mold in the HVAC unit and whatever. But I know that there's, like, there's probably mold everywhere, is there not?
But not these molds that make the toxins.
Okay.
There's a lot of molds that are fine. They don't make any toxins. We can live well with them. It's the ones that make that make the things like the immunosuppressants and the biological warfare kinds of toxins that we don't want to live with them. So doing the dust test just tells us we need to investigate further. And we don't stop until we've really made sure. Like, it's so helpful to find somebody that's really a good inspector that does things like pull out the dishwasher and look to see if there's a little leak behind there, that climbs up in the attic, or pulls out the refrigerator and the washer. And
I guess it's important to hire them yourself, unfortunately, because if you ask your landlord to do it, they're going to be looking for ways to...
I made that mistake.
You did?
Yeah, at the time I should have known better. It was my second run-in with mold. I trusted him but
they don't want to find mold.
I should have known better. Then I had to go and hire my own inspector.
Well, if they do find, then they're going to be legally on the hook for repairing it, so it's going to be expensive.
And the legalese is really getting better, but a decade ago, it was very hard to get a builder or a landlord to do the right thing. It's still kind of hard. The stories are unbelievable, but I will say that sometimes the new construction is as bad or worse than some of the older homes.
Wow.
So if you're, for listeners that are building a new house, I recommend hiring an extra inspector that's not part of the building team and not part of the government team to come in and do things like spray the windows before they put the drywall up with high-powered water to make sure there's not a window leak. Because that's the most common thing that I'm seeing for patients that have mold in new construction, is that the windows weren't installed properly. I think it's a complex thing to get the flashing and the windows all correct. So testing before they're covered up, kind of like my situation the first time around, where I couldn't see that it was leaking through the paint.
Wow. Crazy stuff. All right. Well, thank you for that primer. That's, I think, definitely very helpful. Because I went through a bit of an issue, I guess, myself in my old place. And, I've just barely started to dip my toe into that world. But once I saw the visible mold in the HVAC system and their reticence to actually do anything meaningful about it, I was like, get me out of here. But all very empowering stuff. Let's talk about switch gears a bit and talk about the herbicides and the pesticides. want to talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a contentious topic, right? Like so much is mentioned that organic might have benefits on social media, and you get like a lynch mob of food scientists coming after you.
Have you had that happen?
I haven't had that personally, but I've seen the missiles fly overhead. Some of my friends, will routinely promote organic, and they, then you'll see some like food scientist with like 3 letters after their names do one of those like reaction slop rage bait reels.
Where we know who pays for them. They're
Yeah.
not real food scientists. They're paid for.
That's my assumption.
They have to be.
Yeah.
Like the data is so clear. And you just look at what other countries are doing with the pesticides that are, more aware of what's going on, and they don't allow the pesticides the same way that we do.
Right. I mean, I think we just have to be a bit more careful or specific with the language that we use because, some you'll hear say that organic is more nutritious. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but when you opt for organic, you're reducing your exposure to synthetic herbicides and pesticides.
Well, and I see it in my patients, right? Like the patients that aren't eating organic, we have more glyphosate, more atrazine, and some of the others. And then the patients that are eating organic, there's usually less, but not altogether gone. So to me, organic still isn't perfect. Like there's just factors that we don't have control of, but it's going to be less. And then if we do the things like take the glutathione and other things to help support our bodies, then we don't have to be in a place of fear like, oh my God, I can't eat unless I grow it. But the idea that it's okay to purposefully put the pesticides in our body, I don't think that's... And there's so many things we can't control. The things coming out on air pollution, like I was just reading an article last night on air pollution and the effects on sperm. Like it's kind of crazy how air pollution can impact sperm quality. And that's harder to control, right? We still have to breathe. We can put air filters in. I love your air doctor there.
Yeah, we got air doctors.
Very smart.
In the studio.
We need to be putting those air filtration, really high quality air filtration devices in the rooms that we're in most commonly so that we can control. But we're outside, we're in places, restaurants, we're doing things where we can't control for the air pollution. So just my message is control the things that we can, and eating organic is one of the places that we can. And that even, like we were talking about the animal protein, I think that part of the animal protein conversation that's so convoluted is probably what the animals are being fed. Like if they're being fed a bunch of pesticides and that gets in the animal fat, that's going to actually be passed on through the food.
Yeah, that's something that I never had considered until I had Dr. Ray Dorsey on the podcast, who's a Parkinson's disease expert, and he was talking about the fact that these animals they bioaccumulate, right?
Just like we do.
So if you're eating like a 100% grass-fed, grass-finished cow, that's great. But what was sprayed on that grass?
Exactly.
Which is kind of alarming, but
So that's why we have to do even the organic meat. Which is harder, right?
Yeah. I mean, I still don't believe that everything that if you're eating out and you don't know where the meat has come from, like just pick a lean piece of meat, right? But yeah, I mean, I guess like what you bring into your house and what you're eating day in, day out, feeding to your children. I mean, be a little bit more diligent about that if you're able to.
If you can.
Yeah.
I always put a little plug in for Costco when we have the economical conversation, because they've done such a good job. Like you can buy organic broccoli there for the same price as what you can buy it in a big container of it for the same amount that you can buy it in a natural grocery store, and have enough to feed a whole family that's organic. So there are probably other places like that are making it affordable.
And if you can't eat clean, eat lean.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Because as you're saying, like these toxins get stored in the fat. And I think like lean protein is great anyway, assuming, if you've got like weight to lose, like there's no reason to be, binging on fatty ribeyes and stuff like that. Like just pick leaner cuts. There are plenty. And even there's a lot of cheap options for red meat, which is an incredibly nutrient dense food. You just have to know how to cook it, because it may be tougher, but if you just learn how to cook it more slowly, braise it or whatever, then those cuts become super tender.
And healthier than browning it anyway.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
So the slow cooked is the easier way to go, because you can just throw it in the oven at a low temperature or put it in a Instapot or crock pot.
Are there certain foods that you think are, like, assuming you are on a finite budget, foods that you think are more important to prioritize purchasing organic versus others, where it's maybe less important?
Well, the Environmental Working Group does a good job of, telling us every year what the highest and lowest pesticide foods are. So I'll usually follow that. Honestly, for myself, as you're asking that question, I'm like, oh, how do I actually implement that versus what do I think? And it's hard for me to eat berries that I know are not organic, just because because they tend to be on the higher side of the list. And then corn. So many people have gone to using corn because they're doing a gluten-free diet. And when I see in people that are eating a lot of corn or sugar, if people that eat a fair amount of sugar, is high atrazine, which is a pesticide that's used on a lot of different foods, but especially corn. So
organic corn, that makes sense to me. Yeah, whenever I eat corn, I try to buy organic. I'll do organic for like dark leafy greens. I haven't really been buying organic meat, but I guess it's something to consider.
That's been one of my awarenesses over the last 6 months. I wasn't that careful about it until I started putting some of these puzzle pieces together. I would just do the grass-fed or range chicken.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, what I'm seeing in the labs matters.
Yeah, I mean, it's like whether you're going for grass-fed, grass-finished, you don't know what's being sprayed on the grass. And then for a factory-farmed, grain-finished animal, not only are they basically just eating corn and soy, which are probably loaded with these synthetic, herbicides, pesticides, but they're going to be even fattier because they're fed grain to fatten them up. So it's like a 1-2 punch.
So for eating lean, I think it is really important to get some good fats in, and I would do that organic also. So like some organic olive oil, organic avocado, organic coconut are my favorites. What are your favorites?
Man, olive oil I'm a big fan of. I generally try to get my fats from whole foods, like full fat dairy. I think there's a place for low fat and fat free. Like if you're trying to lose some body fat and you want to allocate those fat calories elsewhere, I think that there's definitely a place for that. But yeah, I'll do like occasionally full fat dairy. Eggs are a great fat source. Mm-hmm. I'm a fan of nuts, which are difficult, I'll admit, to eat moderately, but because they're so calorie dense, but they're so great for you. So every day I pretty much eat 2 to 3 Brazil nuts. I love pistachios. I love almonds for brain health, magnesium, etc. So yeah, I try to get my fats from whole foods. I try not to use a whole lot of added fats.
Great.
So yeah, works. It seems to be working for me. Who knows?
Amen.
Amen.
I think the low fat, just totally low fat, where people aren't having the nuts and seeds and avocado and eggs.
Avocados are great. Yeah.
That gets people into trouble too with their cell membranes. So.
Yeah, hormones, all that stuff.
The dairy, I think, is interesting. Sometimes that's pretty inflammatory for people, but I think that's another one to do organic.
That's what, yeah. I mean, I don't really, but my neurologist friend and colleague, Dr. Ray Dorsey, thinks that that's a really smart move to make. So I don't know. I always like to promote not majoring in the minors, majoring in the majors, and it's just it's an interesting balance, because it's like if you're very overweight, if you're obese, like I would say generally it's better to focus on the macros. No pun intended, like the macros in terms of your diet, your lifestyle, which are going to be sleep, stress mitigation, an exercise routine, getting your steps in, eating a largely whole foods diet. But then also like the macros from a nutritional standpoint would be hitting your protein target.
Absolutely.
But then once you've got that dialed in, then I think, all this other stuff becomes, I mean, I don't think it's unimportant. So it's like where it's just, it's context dependent as most things are, it's like, where are you in your health journey?
Exactly. And you nailed it, like just laying that really good foundation before you go on to those other steps, like getting that nutrition dialed in, get your body composition dialed in. It's so interesting on the toxin side of things, because what I find is that a lot of times people can be eating fairly healthy but still have issues with the weight, and that often is the environmental toxins that have gotten stored in the fat, and the body's kind of holding on to the fat. It doesn't want to release them, because then it's got to figure out what to do with them, and the detox pathways can get overwhelmed. So I find that a lot of times by avoiding the toxins the best they can, helping the body to detoxify, that the toxins just start rolling out. And it's kind of fun to test, because a lot of those tests are in the urine. So when people are dropping weight, a lot of times we see the toxin levels go way up. So that's a yay, because they're getting it out of their body, and it's overall going to help their metabolism. Because we also know that when the toxins are built up in the body, it makes it harder to manage blood sugar and metabolism itself. And so it's just a win-win.
I love that. Okay, so PFAS. What are your I mean, we all have microplastics in us at this point. What is it, like a tablespoon's worth in our brains? It's been speculated. We've got microplastics in our balls if we're guys, microplastics in our mammary tissue if we're women. It's like there's seemingly no end to the ubiquity of these, these artifacts of modern society. So what do we do?
That's a really good question, and it is like it's one that I think is an existential question for humanity, because the links with fertility and the children's health crisis in the literature is huge. So we start by being aware of how it's getting in. So how is our food and water being packaged? What are we putting on our bodies, in our bodies? And then we have to help our detox pathways to get them out. Back to my favorite, liposomal glutathione. I see those levels coming down with the glutathione and then certain binders like Pectisol, and then we use one in the office. It's called CO binder that has a combination of things, so it's easier. And then the clay and charcoal products really do help to zip it out. And then things like infrared saunas. I think overall, like as the body's unloading toxins, other things can come out more easily. So just but we don't other than what's coming out in the urine, we don't have a great way for me to tell you like how much is actually stored in your body. So that's a challenge. I think at this point we just have to assume that we all have it, because we've been eating and drinking out of plastics and putting it on our body and things. And
yeah, what would you say are the major health risks associated with plastic exposure to plastic chemicals like PFAS?
Yeah, the PFAS is, where the literature is really going that's fascinating that I didn't realize until about a year ago is the cancer risk. It's pretty profound. And there's not good regulation yet. Like the whole political, is just driven because we like nonstick things, right? We like things that we can go out in the cold and keep us warm and not get wet. And it's so customer driven. But if we start being aware of where those plastics are, or in the PFAS is, like our microwave popcorn, we can actually help drive the industry changes. but there's not enough regulation on it. It's in
it's
most water supplies and in most food.
And the regulations are like, I mean, it's one of the problems with politics, right? The regulations are apparently, allegedly, I haven't, it's so confusing to me, but apparently the current administration is like relaxing the EPA's limits. I've seen headlines. I haven't vetted this, but on the other hand, I know, because I was in the room when the Maha report was handed over to President Trump, and I've looked into the Maha report. I mean, PFAS they're mentioned as a pressing public health emergency. So I just don't, I don't know which way is up when it comes to what's currently going on, where our priorities are being focused.
I think this is another one of those areas that we have to get involved at the local and state level, because it's too political at the national level. Like we need our states to get involved in regulating the companies that are using these chemicals. And
ultimately to raise awareness from the ground up.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's tests. If your listeners want to test, that you can actually go into your doctor and say, can you measure my PFAS level? And Quest Laboratory will measure some of them.
Whoa.
There's over 1,000 of them. Maybe 2,000 of them. And there's an enormous number of PFAS. Only a few of them can actually be measured. So when you get the results, if you're negative, you don't know for sure that you're negative on everything, but you can get a sense. And then there's a company called Vibrant Laboratories that's not covered by insurance, outside the insurance model, that you can measure quite a few. I think there's like 30 PFAS. It's fascinating to see who's got the high PFAS level and who doesn't. And sometimes it's the high levels are in patients that think they're doing everything right. So we have to really dig into what's going on. One patient came back high for some of the BPAs and some PFAS. She was going to lunch every day at this organic soup place, and they were putting hot soup into plastic. She stopped that. We put her through a very gentle detox, and 6 months later, everything looked amazing.
Wow.
So it's just a matter of like asking the question, is this affecting me? And if it is, you got to do some detective work. And they're the obvious things like handling receipts. I really try not to touch the receipts anymore. Definitely not using plastic in the microwave or anything. And I don't do takeout.
Takeout is like a minefield.
Yeah.
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 It sucks because I love ordering up. And I do it regularly. But you're right. It's like those to-go soup containers. They're coated. They're paper, but the interiors are plastic. Same with coffee cups. With to-go coffee cups
are huge for that. Take your own. Have them fill it, or put it quickly into your own.
I'd feel like such a hippie, but I mean that is pretty much what you have to do today to escape, just becoming petrified in plastic.
Well, try measuring. Like, just see what your numbers are and see what you need to do. And then we need to influence the food industry as to what packaging. One of my favorite paleo food companies, I used to order from them all the time. It comes frozen, super clean. And they change their packaging so that it's like touching every surface of the food. I was like, this can't be okay. Did some investigating, and they're like, oh, it's all approved. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean anything. What's actually in it? And they couldn't tell me what was actually in the packaging, so I quit ordering from them.
Damn. It can be so hard. There's a brand that I have no affiliation with, but I love their food. They're like these to-go protein dishes that you can pick up at Whole Foods or wherever, called Kevin's. That's the name of the brand. And it's like the ingredients are all amazing. And you just like it comes in a little bag of sous vide chicken that you just like throw into a pan, and then it's got this like sugar-free, low-calorie sauce that you dump on top. And I love to doctor it up with like, like some frozen vegetables or whatever. But it's like sous vide, like when you sous vide food, you're cooking your food in plastic.
Stop.
I know.
And then I'm not sure about any of the nonstick pans. I think it's kind of like how BPA, BPB, BPS, like they just kept changing
it's like
plastics,
chemical
but
whack-a-mole.
they're not any better. I'm thinking it's the same thing with the nonstick pans.
Like all of them?
All of them. My opinion. I don't have data to back me up yet. But I think the material that they use to make it nonstick still has something in it that's probably not great. And I haven't found one, so I've quit using them, that doesn't break down in the cooking at some point. It might be 3 months or 6 months, but you can start to see it's eroded a bit, and then it's got to be leaching into the food.
Yeah. No, I think you're very justified in being skeptical. I discovered, like, I guess early on, no affiliation, but green pan. And I bought that. And, my thinking was, I'm not going to use this thing like for everything I cook, but if I want to make eggs in the morning, I mean, I personally have not been able to figure out how to use a stainless steel pan. So I bought one of those just to make a scramble in. And then I started working with Our Place, and they literally say that they don't use PFAS and other chemicals. But I will admit, I don't know what they've replaced.
I don't know about them. I'd be happy to ask them.
Yeah, well, they say that, and I believe Green Pan does as well. They say that they don't use PFAS, which is a huge umbrella category of chemicals. So if they're saying that they're not using PFAS, which includes, if I recall correctly, PTFE or whatever the Teflon chemical is, like, they don't use that stuff.
Okay.
And then on top of that, so I do have an affiliation, but I'm also
I didn't know that.
but I'm always going to be honest with my audience. Like, I'll use them for eggs and stuff. I don't have a chemistry background. I'm not a materials expert, so I don't actually know what they've replaced the PFAS. But the fact that they say that they're PFAS free, I trust that. And then I use it in accordance with the directions. Like, I don't use metal in its interior. I don't stack other appliances into the pan or the pot because you don't want to scratch it. And I replace them like fairly regularly. I think that's generally like best practices for using.
Yes, for sure.
Any
if you're going to use them,
type of nonstick pan.
definitely.
Yeah.
But most households have some nonstick pans in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say like use sparingly if you have to use them at all. But I use it every morning because I make eggs, and it's just like so convenient for me. It's such a convenient way for me to eat eggs, and eggs are great. So,
yeah.
Well, Dr. Ann Shippy, this was so fun. Thank you for coming in.
So fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
We've covered a ton of ground. I've got one last question for you, but before we get to that, you've got this new book out, which I'm super, super excited about. So where can listeners connect with you on social media, and where can they pick up your book?
And Shippy MD. Everything is there. That's the social handle and the website, and lots of great information to answer a lot of these questions and help people. And the book is The Preconception Revolution.
Love it. Well, thanks for writing it. Thanks for coming out again. The last question that gets asked to everybody on the show is, what does living a genius life mean to you?
That's such a great question. And when you ask it, it's different than if you're listening to somebody else.
Yeah.
So thank you for the question. Well, it's definitely something to aspire to. I think to me, it means intentional. And the most intentional thing that I can do is to be aware of my inner conversation, how I'm talking to myself. And I think, especially when I was younger, there was this, just really holding such a level of perfection, like everything just had to be done perfectly. And there's a softening that's happened. And not that I still don't want everything to be done just with such excellence, but it's the inner voice is a lot more encouraging and warm and inviting. And so to me, a genius life is one where we're creating a reality that's loving inside our being, that then's a reflection of how we interact with others outside of us.
Beautifully put. I love that. So great. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And we'll have to have you back. This was so fun. This is a topic that is super important, and it's only gaining increased importance. So thanks again for your work, for your advocacy. Thank you guys for listening. Share this episode with friends and loved ones that you think may benefit from it, and I will catch you on the next episode. Peace, everybody. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.